As promised, we are back with the first GC Live Sunday reset of the South Carolina football season. Hello, everyone. Welcome into another edition of Sunday Reset. I'm your host, Jack Veltri. Appreciate you guys joining as always. And this is the first real edition of Sunday Reset of the season. We had one 2 weeks ago, but obviously, I'm not going to get into it. But if you were there, you know what happened. Had to cut the show short. So we are back and we are getting ready to talk about week 2 of South Carolina taking on SC State. And we're going to briefly look ahead to Vanderbilt towards the end of the show in week 3. Hope you guys are all doing well. Appreciate you guys taking some time out of your NFL football Sunday. It's a busy day around the league. Week 1 of the NFL. You got week 2 of college football. I got my Buffalo Bills on here in about an hour here, and I am looking forward to watching the Bills tonight, and hopefully they will go out and get a win over the Ravens. So we're going to try to stick to doing an hour show tonight. We'll talk about the game, which South Carolina won 38-10 last night. Wasn't the prettiest game. I'll get into why that is in case you missed it. And, of course, we have a lot to get into. But, yeah, just some quick thoughts from last night and just the season so far. Again, Carolina picked up a 38-10 win over the Bulldogs last night at Williams-Brice Stadium. Just a very weird game. You know, you had the weather delay, which pushed the game back about 2.5 hours to about 9:30 p.m., just about. And, I mean, that game didn't end till, I don't know exactly, I think maybe about 12:30. And by the time I was leaving the stadium, it was about 2 a.m., so did not get to sleep until about 4 o'clock in the morning earlier today, and then woke up around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and it's been, wheels in motion ever since. The football season, there's never really a slow point, as you guys are all well aware. And so it's been a busy weekend, but just some quick thoughts. I mean, again, it was just a very strange game. I don't think South Carolina played particularly great. It wasn't their best performance, I'll say that. But, I was talking about it with some buddies and stuff and even coworkers, like, Carolina, you go back to last season, the Old Dominion game was not a good game for them, and they won that one by 4 points, and everyone was, freaking out and stuff, thinking the team was not going to do well. And then what do they do the next week? They go on the road to Kentucky, win their SEC opener in blowout fashion. So, I mean, I think they were 10-point dogs in that game heading into Lexington last season, and they went 9-4, as we all know. And even in the Wofford and Akron games, I didn't think Carolina played their best either. They kind of not slept walk through those games, but, there were some points where it's like it's a little bit close at times, and they pull away as the second half gets going and they win in blowout fashion. And, we're going crazy about Carolina winning by 28 points last night, and I think there's some justification to it. The final score is not totally indicative of how things went for the Gamecocks last night. And so, look, they started pretty slow last night, did not look good offensively for most of the night, as we'll get into here more in a little bit. But, yeah, it was just you got the win. You're 2-0. You're not in the top 10 anymore. You're number 11 in the latest AP poll as of today. But you still have everything in front of you. But now you got to go out here. SEC play starts on Saturday against Vanderbilt, and then you go on the road next week and play a pretty good Missouri team that just beat Kansas yesterday. So you still have all your goals in front of you, obviously, but there's a lot to work on. But at the same time, like, you got the win yesterday, and you won pretty handedly, even though that game was a little bit closer than the score might indicate. So before we get into anything else, and we're going to dive into – first, we'll dive into what some of the latest on the injuries are. I know you guys are asking about that, constantly wondering, what the deal is with that. We have a full report on GamecockCentral.com if you want to read about it, but I'll also talk about it here in a few minutes. But first, got to talk to you guys as always. If you've watched any of these GC Live programs, you know what's coming next. Our good friend Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you are in the market to buy a home, or you just need help with any of those mortgage needs and you don't know where to begin, it's confusing, right? It can be tough. That's where a guy like Clint comes into the picture. He'll take you step by step through the process and get you on that way towards securing that home that you've always wanted, or, again, helping you out with all your mortgage needs. He's been in the mortgage industry for more than 20 years now. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan, diehard at that, like a lot of you guys listening here. And he's also been a long time supporter of Gamecock Central and all of our GC Live programs. So again, if you've ever listened to me, Wes, Chris, Kendall, anybody talk on GC Live, you've always heard us talk about Clint. His information is above me here on screen, but if you are listening and not watching, the number to call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or go to clinthammond.com for more information. That will be above me here on screen all show long. All right, as promised, I'm going to get into the injury report real quick. So I don't have the audio pulled up on what Shane Beamer did. He did speak to the media in his Sunday teleconference earlier this evening around 5 o'clock. So we do have the audio on our YouTube page. So if you're watching on YouTube right now, after the stream's over or whenever you really want to, you can always come back to the stream and check out what he had to say in about what was a 18-minute or so press conference. But getting into the injuries, he feels pretty optimistic on everyone, as we were talking earlier this evening in regards to being able to play on Saturday against Vanderbilt. We had a good idea from Shane talking that Judge Collier and JT Gear, who both missed the game yesterday, were going to be able to be back for Saturday's game against Vanderbilt. We will also get the SEC injury report sometime this week. So that will be updated throughout the week, and we'll have that, which will also probably give us a better inclination of how some guys are progressing, whether they're probable, doubtful, out. You know how the deal works with that starting last year. The one guy that they're still kind of waiting to, it's a wait and see to see if he'll be ready to go and whatnot, is Brady Hunt. They're doing some tests on him today, and they're hoping to get those results back in a little bit. So they're keeping their fingers crossed. Hopefully he will be okay. But yeah, Carolina had a lot of guys banged up, and that was a bit concerning. I think that was my number one key to the game yesterday, is not what the offense or the defense is going to do. In these types of games where you're just playing against a team that you should be able to handle, like you did yesterday, you want to come away healthy. And Carolina, unfortunately, did not completely. And when you hear Shane talk last night about, it doesn't look good with the injuries and stuff, because he didn't even get into a full injury report last night because it was just too many guys to even name. Brandon Cisse went down with an injury yesterday. It got to a point where he and Brian Thomas Jr., who had a great game, by the way, we'll get into him in a little bit. Him and BT got into a collision yesterday on the field, and Shane and the staff thought he'd be okay to play. And then it got to a point where Cisse was just kind of like, yeah, I just can't go. So I think it's better to be, cautious about those sort of things. Jalen Kilgore didn't suit up yesterday. And like this comment from my guy Garnet Yardbird says, yeah, I mean, the South Carolina was down to its fourth string nickelback, because you had Kilgore out, you had Brandon Cisse out, you had Jaquel Holloman, who also got banged up. He got helped off the field. And then you had, Kelvin Hunter as your fourth string nickel, who was playing a lot yesterday. So he had a pretty good performance in his time on the field. But from an injury standpoint, it does seem like Carolina is going to be okay. Again, we will see what happens when the injury report comes out from the SEC this week. We'll get an idea of whether these guys are probable, doubtful, ready to play, all that sort of stuff. It's just going to be one of those things where, you can follow on Gamecock Central when we have those reports in. But again, it's one of those things you're going to want to be keeping up with, just because Carolina's going to need those guys this weekend when Vanderbilt comes to town. And that's going to be a tough game for sure. Getting back into the game, though, again, we touched on the injury report right now, but the game itself, again, I didn't think it was anything great from Carolina. It was very much akin to what we saw last year against these FCS, lower tier programs. And I'm not saying SC State's a bad program, or the Akrons of the world, or the Old Dominions, or whoever, Wofford, like all, fine programs in their own respect. And especially SC State, who, won the MEAC last year, 9 games they won, made it to the Celebration Bowl where they lost to Jackson State last year. So definitely a team coached by Shanice Berry, who was at Benedict, obviously, very fired up and ready to come play. And they were, they lived up to what, Berry had been talking about throughout the week. Like, so much talk about South Carolina and what they're going to do and all that stuff. But, Shanice Berry and SC State are going to come ready to play too. And they certainly were. So Yeah, that first quarter was, quite frankly, just not good. 12 yards of offense in the first quarter is not good. And the argument is, okay, well, Carolina had the bad field position on every single drive in that first quarter, which is true. Like, they were backed up inside their own 10-yard line. However, if I'm not mistaken, in that first quarter, Nick Harbor, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, didn't Nick Harbor have the long kickoff return after the field goal, got out to about the 40-yard line, and a holding call on the kickoff return brings that play back to about the 10-yard line? So, and again, they had a lot of procedural penalties and stuff. So they shot themselves in the foot with field position in this game. And, when you're facing a team like Vanderbilt this upcoming weekend that loves to win the time possession battle and stay on offense as long as possible and try to melt the clock on you, you got to be careful with that sort of stuff, because if you're not in good field position most of that game on Saturday, you might not win. Now, the other thing that Shane did mention, because the offense has a lot of problems, as we all know, but the big thing is that they haven't turned the ball over. That's the main key. Because I did ask Shane tonight, like, what can you take away? What's your biggest takeaway so far from the two games? And it's the fact that they have not turned the ball over, and the defense and special teams have played pretty well. But obviously, they got to be better on offense. And I'm seeing it all in the comments here. I mean, people are saying the offensive line stinks. You got to get the offensive line fixed. We need Tree in. Yeah, so Shane was asked about Tree Babalade, and as I'm looking at the transcript here that I wrote on GamecockCentral.com, which you can go and check out. And again, you can listen to the audio on YouTube. You can check it out you can check out the story with the transcript and everything Shane said on our website, GamecockCentral.com. But Shane did say that Tree is healthy. They've got a lot of confidence in him. He brings a lot of value to the team. And basically the way he put it is that they have the five out there that they feel like is going to give them the best chance to be successful. And basically Tree's got to come along in, like the rest of the guys on the football team. So, he is not far behind is what Shane added. He's absolutely one of the top guys. The thing was that Tree didn't play last night. Shane just felt like it wasn't the right moment to put him in the game. So take that for what you will. It's it's not ideal when you have all these guys that you recruit, and they're 4 or 5 star players, and some of the best players especially in the state of South Carolina, like a Josiah Thompson, Shed Surratt, who got his first start last night, had some good moments. He did give up 1 sack, but on the touchdown pass from Sellers to Dre Jacobs, I thought the blocking on that play was really, really good. Again, let's not get misconstrued. The offensive line has problems, but they're not incompetent. They are not unable to just block. Like, they get beat sometimes, but heck, it's week 2, and what offensive line is not, like, South Carolina's offensive line is not the only one going through troubles. And I know, and let's also, talk about the elephant in the room here. So many people on Twitter, on our message boards, I even see it on Facebook half the time, people talking about South Carolina needs to fire Mike Shula. They need to fire Lonnie Teasley. Let me ask, what is that exactly going to do? Like, first off, if you fire Mike Shula, what's your plan? Huh? Who are you going to promote to take over play calling duties? Huh? Have you thought that far ahead yet? Probably not. And then what are you going to do offensive line? The suggestion I continue to see is Sean Elliott should be coaching the offensive line, which, of course, he has experience doing so. But if that doesn't go well, then what's the next excuse? Oh, fire Sean Elliott? Like, you see what I'm saying here? I don't think it really does much good to call for everyone to, be fired and stuff, because things are just – again, you won by 28 points yesterday, and you would think some of the reaction out there, it's like you would have thought Carolina got their butt kicked in this game. But again, they didn't play great. I know that. I was there. I watched the whole game. But they got a lot of work to do. But I'm also looking at the fact that they are 2-0 and they have problems, but it's week 2. Don't you want to have some of these issues now rather than the end of the year? Again, I bring up the point with the Old Dominion game last year. We all remember what happened. Carolina did not play good at all in that game, yet they won. And, the sky was falling in Gamecock land. Carolina was a 2-win team, 3-win team in a lot of people's eyes. And what did they get? What did they do? They go 3-3, and then they go win 6 games in a row to end the regular season with a few big wins in there. So, point being, look, if this is middle of the season and we're still seeing these problems, okay. That's something we have more of a sample size to kind of look back at it, and it's like, okay, there are problems and they need to be fixed. I'm not saying there are not problems. Let me just make that clear. There are problems on the offensive line. The blocking has got to be more consistent. But again, I think we can take a few things away. They did only give 2 sacks last night, and the bigger issue for me, it's not even the sacks necessarily. It's the fact of you're not giving Lenore Sellers enough time in the pocket. You're not giving and I think it's also the running backs on this. It's a mix. The running backs I don't think they're finding holes, but also the offensive line isn't necessarily providing them all the time. So it's a perfect blend of like two things that need to be going right, and when they're not, it's if one thing goes wrong, the other can't succeed. You know what I mean? So again, the sky is not falling. Again, the season is you would think Carolina just got their butt handed to them yesterday by SC State and had a horrific performance. Again, they won 38-10. And I get it. It's not perfect. And even last week against Virginia Tech, Carolina didn't look great and people were freaking out, but it's so early in the year that me personally, I'm not ready to jump to conclusions yet about what this team is going to be. Ask me again by the end of the month. If Carolina loses like 2 of their next 3 games or whatever, and things are just not looking good for the offense stuff, that's the other thing. I don't even really think, without knowing this for sure, I really don't feel like that Mike Shula has fully opened up the playbook yet. So for all of you calling for his job and stuff, and look, has it been great? No. Like his sample size of 3 games against Illinois in the bowl game last year, and then the first 2 games of this year has not been great. But teams struggle. Look at Clemson; they struggled. LSU struggled. I mean, look, Carolina, I think, is going to be fine. We're going to see this playbook start to probably be opened up, I would imagine, more so this weekend if it has not yet. And then you go from there, and you hope the results are better on the field. So, again, I don't think the performance was great yesterday. It does concern me a little bit going into this Vanderbilt game, but I think Carolina having the home field advantage this weekend should help a lot. Now, let's not talk so much about the negatives. We will talk about the positives from the game last night because, again, they did win, and not saying celebrate. You should celebrate the wins when they come, but there are things that were not great last night, as we all know, but we're going to talk about the positives. And here's one right here. We'll start with the defense. I mean, Damon Clowney played very well last night. He was solid last night. He gave me flashes of Jadavion out there. Yeah, he almost did kill that one guy out there. Very, very good game from him. I think we have the answer on who is opposite of Dylan Stewart on the edge side. Brian Thomas Jr. played a hell of a game last night. 4 tackles, 3 QB hurries, the 1 sack. I think he had 1 TFL as well, if I'm not mistaken. And he also had the forced fumble that led to, I was going to say JT here, but I meant to say Jaron Willis returned for 46 yards for a touchdown for a scoop and score. If you go back and watch the play, and I broke it down this morning on the 5 plays that made the difference to help South Carolina win this game. It's like the third quarter, BT is going up on the left side of the line, left tackle moves to the second level, doesn't even touch Brian Thomas, blocks, I think it was Justin Okoronkwo, and leaves BT on an island wide open to just go straight to the quarterback. The crazier thing is, not even just that, which I can understand because that's the way the play was going for SC State, but the fact that there was a tight end kind of in motion going towards the left, and he just doesn't even touch BT. BT is literally right in his face, doesn't touch him. And then what does BT do? The running back comes down the middle, just punches the ball out, knocks it free with one hand. Really athletic play. Jaron Willis, ball goes literally right into his hands, picks it up, and just runs the other way free for a 46-yard touchdown. So my point being, I think South Carolina has an answer with who is going to be not necessarily the next Kyle Kennard, but who is the complementary piece to what Dylan Stewart can do, who also had a sack last night as 2 through 2 games. So he's on a really good pace right now. But I'm telling you, the way, like Brian Thomas Jr. was my defensive player of the game last night. And also that was South Carolina's defensive player of the game too, according to Shane Beamer. Really nice game last night. We're finally seeing what he can do. We've seen it in flashes. And again, the defense in general, I thought played very, very well. I have a little bit of a concern with the secondary giving up some of these third down plays that SC State converted on some of these shorter passes. But overall, very, very nice performance from the defense, only giving up 10 points in this one. So kudos to that group. Special teams. Nothing more you could say. They are continuing to impress me, and I think a lot of people as well. Vakari Swain. Vakari freaking Swain. Wow. Wow, man. I mean, who else had their mind just go? I mean, crazy. Crazy what he did last night. In case you didn't watch the game last night, he had one punt return touchdown last week against Virginia Tech. And you're like, okay, maybe when Jalen Kilgore returns, maybe that'll be your punt returner again. But by the way, Vakari Swain is the punt return moving forward, according to Beamer. He had two more punt return touchdowns last night. The first one was I think it was 65? Let's see. I got the number pulled up somewhere. I think it was 65 yards last night, 65 yards. And that was when Carolina was trailing 3-0 in this game in the second quarter. So that was a big play. Spun out of a tackle and then turned it upfield. And by the way, in both of these punt return touchdowns, the blocking has been tremendous. I mean, he had 6 guys in front of him on the convoy blocking ahead of him, and none of them got a penalty. That's the big thing. I think last year, maybe a year before, we would have seen Carolina get a penalty on one of these punt return touchdowns. But all 3 of them from Vakari, no penalties. That is massive. And so the blocking was really, really good yesterday. I can't remember exactly who it was that had the one block at the end. I'm trying to let me make sure. I think I had it written down on the 5 plays. But, I mean, my goodness. Eric Rice. Oh, my gosh. Eric Rice had a fantastic block on the first punt return. Really nice play. Again, you need the good blocking out there to make a play like that happen, and you did. And then the second one, really heads-up play by Vakari, number 1. Even Shane mentioned it earlier tonight. So I think I keep going back and forth on who it was. I thought it was David Busey at first, and then on the stat sheet, it says it was Maurice Brown. And then Shane's saying it was David Busey tonight. I don't know, but somebody got a hand on that ball. I think it was Mo Brown on the second punt, tips it in the air. And the really smart play by Vakari here is that the ball landed on the ground, touched a SC State player, and you can see like Colin Bryant and somebody else. I don't remember who it was. And then Vakari has the foresight, the awareness to be like, hey, look at that. Like SC State touched that ball. Whatever happens, even if Vakari touched the ball and he fumbled it, it's South Carolina ball. It was a really smart play for him to pick it up around the plus 40-yard line, basically do what he did before, take it around the edge to the right side, and then go home free to the end zone. I mean, really, really intelligent football play by Vakari, and he has been a huge difference maker for this team. Again, offense wasn't great last night, as we're going to get into in a second again, but Vakari Swain was responsible for 14 of your points last night. That's impressive. Really, really good game for him last night. And he is, and again, I think we're setting the bar now of where it's like, I think realistically you can't expect a touchdown from him every single game in punt return, but he poses that threat now of where it's like, hey, you got to be punting. If you're a punter, be careful with Vakari Swain. Don't punt right to him. Maybe punt away from him or something just to make sure he doesn't return it on us. But he's been great so far. And if he keeps this up, kudos to him. But I think realistically, it's like, hey, like teams are probably going to try to make sure he has no ability to return. But he has been awesome so far and a huge difference maker for South Carolina. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention Mason Love had a great game yesterday. William Joyce had a really nice 49-yard field goal. I know he missed that 45-yarder, but the one to send South Carolina into the half on that 49-yarder, really, really nice kick by him there. It was just a good game last night. I think the blocking was great. I think that's an underrated factor. Again, you had 2 special teams touchdowns yesterday. You had a defensive touchdown this game, and then your offense did a little bit in this game. And again, the offense didn't need to do anything crazy in this game, and they didn't. They were mediocre at best. 12 yards in the first quarter, 108 by the end of the first half, and 3 points to show for it with William Joyce making the field goal at the end of the first half. I thought the 2-minute drive at the end of the first half was pretty good, but before that, the offense was non-existent. And then the second half, they get the touchdown right out of the gate on the opening drive, an Oscar Adaway 5-yard run, and then you get the 35-yard touchdown pass in the third quarter from Sellers to Dre Jacobs, who Dre had a great game last night. Again, 4 catches, 1 touchdown versus Gamecock. Very good game for him last night. Nothing for Nick Harbor last night. Donovan Murph had a pair of catches in this game, getting the start at receiver. Still waiting on to see what's going on with Jared Brown. He hasn't been 100%, but he only had a 2-yard rush yesterday, and he's only played 2 plays this season. So you're expecting more out of him. Mazio Bennett had 2 catches yesterday, but he's been very quiet. So you're expecting more from a lot of guys, but again, it could be anyone's night. It was Nick Harbor's night last week against Virginia Tech. It was Dre Jacobs' night last night against SC State. Whose night's going to be against Vanderbilt? I'd be willing to bet it's somebody different than the other 2 guys. If I had to take a guess right now, I'm saying Donovan Murph. He had a very nice game last night. Very nice game last night with 2 catches for 39 yards, averaged 19.5 yards per catch. So really good game from the Irmo native and a freshman. So yeah, that's the other thing. Again, I mentioned it before with the people that are calling for Mike Shula and Lonnie Teasley all to be fired. What is that going to do? But I think we're going to see more of the playbook. Like you're really going to open up the entire playbook against SC State. Is that what we're doing? No, you're crazy if you think you're going to do that. We're going to see Carolina, I would imagine, open it up more if they have not already against an SEC opponent. You have to. What else are you waiting for at that point? You're definitely going to open it up more this weekend. And I think the thing you got to figure out, and Shane mentioned this a little bit tonight, I think you got to figure out the balance of Lenoris improvising versus, all right, they want to get him to step up. They want to get these quarterbacks to step up in the pocket and have room to throw and stuff, but they're just not having that right now. Blocking hasn't been particularly great on the offensive line, as I mentioned. It hasn't been awful, but it could be better. That's the thing. And so you're trying to give Lenoris more time in the pocket, but also I think we do need to see more comfortability with Sellers being able to run, because I just feel like he has not really been his best self so far. He's been fine. I mean, he was all right last night, 128 yards and a touchdown, but he could be a lot better, as we all know. So, yeah, last night, offense was fine. I take that back. Offense was mediocre. Defense was great. Special teams, excellent. Nothing more to say there. I'm satisfied with the game last night. I'm a little bit worried, like I said. Vandy coming into town on Saturday. They are going to be ready to roll. They are coming off a massive win. Well, massive. I mean, Virginia Tech is okay. They're fine. I don't think they're as bad as people say. But VT in Blacksburg yesterday really beat them bad yesterday. Scored 34 points in the second half. They were down by 10 at halftime. And they go out there and score 34 points in the second half, shutting out Vanderbilt in that second half. It reminded me a lot of, and not just because the score was exactly the same with 44-20, it reminded me a lot of A&M and Carolina last year, where it's a close game at halftime. In Vandy's case, they were trailing, and then Carolina shuts them out in the second half. Exactly what we saw here from Vandy. And they went on the road to Lane Stadium and did it. One of the crazier environments in college football. Enter Sandman. You know the deal. And Vandy is not this same team from a few years ago that is the dormant, they're tough. They're going to be a tough out next week for Carolina. And again, I think it really benefits them that they are at home. It should be a crazy crowd. Hopefully no lightning delays or any of that nonsense that we had yesterday. But again, and the other thing I'll mention real quick, I think the delay and all that had an effect on South Carolina. You're telling me if you go 4 hours sitting in the locker room waiting for an update, like God knows what those guys were doing in there, but I can imagine like that had an impact on what they did on the field with the slow start and stuff. Just my 2 cents, but again, no idea what happened in between those 4 hours when they were not on the field warming up and all that. But I have a feeling that probably impacted the way things went a little bit in the game. Back to Vanderbilt, though. Again, really nice win for them last night. Super solid performance for them. They make it tough coming in here next week as a 2-0 team. That again, they went to Blacksburg and won. Who's to say they can't come to Columbia and do the same exact thing? You have some nice pieces on offense. We all know about Diego Pavia, the quarterback that has talked a lot of smack this summer here. It reminds me a lot of Tommy Castellanos from Florida State with the Alabama game in a lot of ways. This is the game that Pavia notably has circled on his calendar. So we will see what happens. I mean, Carolina won this game handedly last season, 28-7 in Nashville. And then, look, Vanderbilt is going to come ready to play. And we're going to see if Carolina shows up. They have to – the key for this upcoming weekend and here's the other thing that gets brought up here by R.L. Smith. The question is, Jack, have our corners been getting burned a bit, or is that regular? No, it's not that they're getting burned necessarily. I think it's more so – it was more so prominent in the VT game. It was the 50-50 balls that they were losing. That was the issue, in my opinion. Again, if you have a different opinion, you're welcome to share it. But I think that was the issue, was the 50-50 balls, and losing those was definitely – I mean, you won the game against VT, but that hurt because there were about 5 or 6 explosive plays in that game. And then last night, I think, again, I have not gotten a chance to watch back on the replay yet. I'll be checking it out tomorrow probably, but I think there were a lot of times where SC State is running these routes out to the flat or over the middle, and they're getting these third down pickups, and it goes for about 10, 12 yards or whatever, but it's a first down. And so that hurt South Carolina a bit last time. I'm going to look at what SC State's third down conversion rate was. They were 6 of 16 on third down. So that's not ideal. Either Carolina giving up a lot of those plays that extend drives. And if you do that against a team like Vanderbilt, that can hurt you, especially as a team that likes to own the time of possession and keep your offense off the field. Like, that's going to hurt South Carolina. I think that's why South Carolina won this game last year. Is we knew that was the case last year. And the offense was very good on third down, took control of the game when they needed to, made a lot of big plays on defense. And I mean, if that's the case again this weekend, you should feel pretty good about winning. But after this performance this weekend, it's got a lot of people, I think, kind of wondering, is this group ready for SEC play? And I asked Shane on the spot, first question of the teleconference, do you feel like this group is ready for SEC play? He said they better be. They have to be. There's no excuse not to be at this point. I know it's 2 games, but the conference play does not wait for you to be ready. You're either going to get punched in the mouth, or if you are ready, you got a chance to do something really special. Carolina, I think, is going to be ready for it. I think this is going to be I would imagine it's a tough week of practice, right? I mean, like it's got to be. Like, after the performance they had, where they started out so slow against a FCS school. I know you won the game by 28, but you got to be better. You have to be better. Some of the things they did in that game, it wasn't a terrible performance, but like some of the things they did in that game, whether it's the slow start or the offense not doing much at all and having to rely on – because, again, you're not going to get Vakari Swain having 2 punt return touchdowns every single week. If he does, I'll eat my words on that on the next show. But, again, you got to be better offensively, got to figure out the run game. You really don't have much of that going right now. When your leading rusher is going for 30 yards and Rasul Faison and Oscar Attaway, your 2 lead backs, are going for 41 yards and a touchdown combined yesterday, that's an issue. It's not just a running back issue, but it's also the blocking needs to be a bit better. So, again, had some moments last night, but you got to be more consistent. And if your offense is starting off in bad field position and you're committing penalties like you were last night, so many of them early on in the game, and you're giving Vanderbilt the football around midfield every time, it's not going to be good. Not going to be good. We had a question here. I'm looking on the screen. Something about PFF. We do have a story coming up on PFF here in about an hour on GamecockCentral.com from one of our interns, Griffin Goodwin. He will have the PFF grades for the week up on Central. So whenever that's up, go ahead and check it out on the site. if you guys want to go ahead and do that. And here's a interesting comment from Big Snow as we'll get into some of y'all's questions. Again, do you have a question for me or anything you want to talk about as we're getting into the later portion of the show? Now that we talked about the game and stuff, we will break down any of your questions, comments, anything you guys want to talk about from the game. This is probably the time to do so. Big Snow says, seems to me that Sellers has trust issues in the receivers or he's so afraid to throw a pick. I can see that. But I don't think he has trust issues with the receivers because we've seen him throw some balls. I remember that one ball I threw to Donovan Murph last week through an extremely tight window that was caught, but it's like VT was probably a few inches away from getting a hand on it, and it's like, oh, that could have been an incompletion or even a pick. So I don't think there's not trust. I think there definitely is trust. I don't know necessarily if it's him being afraid to throw a pick. I think the thing I'll mention here, I feel like we just haven't seen Sellers scramble the way he did last year. There was a few plays last night that stuck out. There was a quarterback run. Can't remember what quarter, can't remember what time. But you guys will know about what I'm talking about if you watched the game last night, I think. There was a QB run to the left, and I think it was a few yards to pick up the first down, maybe, or get back to the line to gain. And Sellers just slides inbounds to the left when typically he's bulldozing through guys. I mean, this is the same guy that last week against VT plowed his way into the end zone on the first drive of the game, no problem. We've seen him so many times break out of a million tackles and make big plays, but that was curious to me last night that he just decided, yeah, I'm just going to slide. And again, I can't remember the exact situation of the game at that point, but I do remember that play specifically. There was also the one where Shed Surratt got beat on the one block where he gives it the sack and Sellers just kind of forced to run out. Again, I think that's kind of going back to the whole, is the playbook open? Is it not fully open? I think we just have not seen Lenoris run the way we've seen. It's not like he's hurt or anything. I just think it's more so like we have not seen the full extent of what he can do yet this year. And we know he's capable of it. He did it last year against Clemson and Vanderbilt and all these different teams. And it feels a little bit like the beginning of last year where it's like, hey, he's getting his feet wet. He's getting more confident. Once he does, he could be great, as we all know. So I think it's just again, I think the confidence is there. This is his second year as the starter. I don't think it's an issue with the trusting with the receivers or anything. And Fish Addict too brings up, I think he trusts his receivers, but not his offensive line. I can see that. I don't know if that's the case, but I could totally see that being the case where it's like, look, if the offensive line is not blocking for more than 2 seconds, then if he was under duress a lot last night. And so that can be an issue when you know, like, hey, I'm not going to get the blocking, so I don't think I can run as much as I would like. And not to say when he ran last year, the protection was great. It was fine at times. There were some games where Carolina didn't give up a single sack. But point is, it's got to be better. And, again, all facets of offense go together. The run game, the offensive line, the receivers catching footballs, the tight ends blocking and doing their thing in the passing game, and Sellers himself. He's the leader of this offense. I think things will be fine. I'll be very interested to see what the game plan looks like offensively coming out of the gate next week. I think the first drive is going to be so critical because we saw what happened in the VT game, going down the field in 7 plays. We saw what happened last night where you're going 3 and out every single time. In that first quarter, it felt like, what are we going to see from this offense early on in this game against Vanderbilt? Because if Vanderbilt strikes early and fast, that could be a problem, especially if the offense gets off to a slow start. And the good thing is the defense has been great. They've held their own. They've only allowed 1 touchdown so far this year. I know it's against VT and SC State and all that stuff, but I think the defense has done their part. Special teams has been great. And you're just kind of thinking like, okay, the offense is okay, not great so far. But again, we say it all the time during the preseason and stuff. The defense is always seemingly farther ahead along than the offense because there's so much new going on. You have new receivers, new plays, new play caller. And again, Carolina notoriously gets off to slow starts in the month of September under Shane Beamer. We've seen them drop multiple games in the first month. Last year was like that first time where Carolina actually had a relatively good month of September where they only lost one game, and that was it. Like, they were fine otherwise. And honestly, they probably should have gone undefeated through that first month of the year, not losing to LSU, but we're not getting into that right now. The point is, Carolina's been in worse spots before. They've dropped multiple games in the month of September. They still have time to do so, obviously. But I think my predictions for this team, you're going 9-3, and you are undefeated going into October. So I think the schedule is pretty favorable. It's a little bit tougher now that Vanderbilt looks a lot more challenging than maybe a lot of people thought. I thought maybe last year was a little bit of a fluke, but obviously they got Eli Stowers back. They got Diego Pavia back, Clark Lee back for another year. Like, some good defensive players returning. It's going to be tough. And again, we'll have much more of a thorough, in-depth breakdown of Vanderbilt throughout the week. Again, they're 2-0 on the year. Went to Blacksburg last night, picked up a really big win there, and they are a real threat to South Carolina, I think, right now. The schedule is a little bit tougher knowing that that's the case. So we will see what happens. But again, South Carolina, 2-0 right now, in a good spot. That's all you can ask for. And, Garnet Yardbird brings up the point. Eli Stowers is a problem. That is Vanderbilt's tight end. He followed Pavia from New Mexico State out to Vanderbilt before last season, and he's going to be tough for whoever is guarding him in this game, whether it's the linebackers, whether it's nickel, DBs, whoever, going to be a real threat in the passing game. So that game on Saturday, it's now been announced, 7:45 p.m. on SEC Network, Saturday night, under the lights, Willie B. Hopefully there's no bad weather. Hopefully there's no lightning delays. And hopefully Carolina can put together a much overall better performance. They've been good in two aspects of the game. We're waiting on the third aspect to kind of catch up a little bit. And when you're good in all three aspects, you can win a lot of football games. You know what else you can do? Even if your offense isn't great, you don't turn the ball over. That helps out a lot. Carolina hasn't turned the ball over through 2 games so far. So you knock on wood and hope that continues to be the case. I think that's going to do it for now. Again, we're back to doing this every single Sunday. Planning to do this every Sunday night, potentially. My schedule will, for home games, yes. But for road games, it's a little tougher because, I'm going to Missouri in 2 weeks. I can't remember exactly what time I'm flying back from St. Louis, but I think it's in the early afternoon maybe. So the time on the road games I want to get into a more normal time slot, like 7 o'clock ideal every Sunday night would be great. Be awesome. And it won't be an issue for home games, not to my knowledge, unless something comes up. But, typically for road games, it's going to be a little bit more in flux. So, again, every week I'll have that information out before the show starts and all that stuff. So you guys are aware of when to hop on. But I know you guys come on anyway, and you guys are awesome to talk to. Appreciate all the comments as always and y'all's insight and what you guys think of the game, because obviously it needs to be a bit better, in my opinion. Good, not great. But you're 2-0, and you're looking forward to a really big game on Saturday night. So we will be back again next Sunday night to break down Carolina and Vanderbilt. And then after that, we are getting ready for a trip to Como for the Mayor's Cup against Missouri here in 2 weeks. But first up, Vanderbilt. So I'll be back here on Wednesday afternoon with Kendall Smith, as always, in our GC Live slot, 2:30 p.m., breaking down the Gamecocks, what Shane Beamer said, what the player said, what the coordinator said, and turning the page to Vanderbilt. Wes and Chris, I know, are going to be on here throughout the week, previewing the next game, reacting and sharing their thoughts. But I have already shared mine, and we're moving on to Vanderbilt from here and getting ready to rock and roll next weekend. If you guys haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Gamecock Central, right here. If you're watching on YouTube right now, I'll be out of here in another minute or so. Click off the video, hit the like button, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Like and subscribe. You know the deal. Helps out the algorithm, whatever that means. All that sort of stuff. And subscribe to GamecockCentral.com. It's a great time to join the site right now. Great time in the Insiders Forum. We had, my last count, we had 67,000 viewers on the Insiders Forum on our game thread last night. Y'all, that is wild. That is wild. That thread was popping before the game even began. We had 33,000 people on the viewing that thread before the game even began during the delay. So you guys are hungry for football, and obviously so am I. And it's a lot of fun getting to hang out and talk with you guys on the message board. So a great time over there, but we also have plenty of great content on our website. Like I said, the full Beamer transcript from tonight is up. So definitely go ahead and check that out if you want to read more into what Shane has had to say from this evening. So appreciate you guys as always. It's a pleasure talking to you guys. I'll be back on here next Sunday night. We will do it 7 p.m. and we will be talking Carolina, Vanderbilt, breaking that game down. Till next time, guys. Appreciate you guys as always. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you again soon.